I think riding, liberty, everything, it's a 50-50 partnership. You need to be putting in as much effort as your horse. And if you want your horse to change, then you need to change.
Welcome to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, a source for riding and training insights with the goal of helping your horse be a happy, light, and willing partner. I'm your host, Amalia Dempsey, a mainstream equestrian rider who discovered natural horsemanship, and now I help riders like you achieve connection and communication, so you can have more fun and fulfillment whilst prioritising partnership with your horse. Want to find out my horse training philosophy? Access the free Connection and Communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com. Now sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes. Welcome to episode 16 of the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, and in today's episode I'm going to be interviewing Sophie Stallmann. You know her as Sophsta Bugsy on Instagram. Sophie was born and raised on her family's horse and cattle property. She loves getting her hands dirty and working on the property, whether it be fencing, processing calves, or mustering. She says this is where she truly feels at peace. Sophie has always been in love with animals of all shapes and sizes, but horses have taken a special part of her heart. She loves training and creating special bonds with her animals and learning from the process. Sophie really loves working with her horses right from the beginning, where they are present at or just after birth, through their weaning, starting under saddle, playing with liberty and trick training, and eventually competing in camp drafts and challenges. Sophie also loves to teach what she's learnt, and so she began her riding and training school where she teaches and helps others build their riding, equine skills, and relationships with their own horses. She is currently studying a Bachelor of Equine Science at the University of Queensland. Sophie is a full-time student, part-time photographer, and balances study, competitive equine goals, liberty and trick training, and teaching horse riding and liberty lessons. In this episode, we discuss Sophie's start with horses growing up on a horse and cattle property, including riding freshly started horses from the age of 5, balancing her adventure-packed life on the farm, training horses, teaching others, part-time photography, studying full-time, starting young horses under saddle, and competing in camp drafting. Her love of studying animal behaviour and learning theory and how that has influenced the training of her own horses. The personalities of her different horses, including Bugsy, of course, and Rabbit and her baby horse, Zinc. Sophie's balanced approach and philosophy to horse training. Defining positive and negative reinforcement and how and why Sophie uses both. We discuss bridleless riding with a neck rope, why Sophie and her horses love competing, all about camp drafting, the sport, and training a horse for competitive camp drafting, what makes a happy horse, all the controversial questions as usual, what started her interest in trick training and how she's navigated the various trick training videos on the internet, why blaming the horse for mistakes can be detrimental to your horsemanship, the importance of patience, misconceptions around negative reinforcement, the bits versus bitless debate, who inspires her and what she's currently studying. Plus, I answered some of your requested questions on Instagram, including the process of training a horse for camp drafting and Sophie's advice around teaching horses to rear, plus so much more. Sophie is a beautiful, down-to-earth human being with wisdom and knowledge beyond her years. She is humble, intelligent, and passionate, and I'm very excited to bring you this episode full of horsey goodness. Welcome, Sophie, to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Amalia.
I'm really excited to hear all about your horsemanship journey. So let's start at the start. How did you get involved in horses and what has led you to where you are today?
Well, I was actually lucky enough to be born and raised on a horse and cattle property. So I have fallen in love with animals from a very young age. I used to do absolutely everything I could to be with them and be around them. Horses, dogs, cattle, chooks, absolutely everything. I've also been a wildlife carer for quite a few years, and that was a massive part of my love for animals. When I was really little, before I could ride independently, I was on Dad's lap. I was always on a horse with him. He would pull me up and I would ride around with him because I just wanted to be a part of it so badly. When I was old enough to ride by myself, I was very lucky. I got my first pony, which was a little red roan Shetland pony called Rusty, and he was a little bit of a terror. He loved to escape from every paddock, and he used to love to buck and carry on, but I absolutely adored him. I was so proud of him. I would just always lead my little cousins around and ride him as often as I could. I just absolutely adored him. When I grew out of Rusty, I was very lucky again, and I was given a horse by mum and dad, who dad was also competing on at the time. Her name was Rabbit, and she was a beautiful Seal Bay horse, and she's still with us today. She's actually Bugsy's mum. So Rabbit was born a year after I was. So I was riding her around when I was 5, and she was a fresh little breaker, and we just had an amazing connection from when we were both really young. And she has probably taught me the most of riding and how to work with horses. She taught me how to muster. She taught me how to be a better rider. She even taught me how to compete. I remember very vividly my very first camp draft with her. I was so nervous, I'd nearly pulled out, and I went in to the camp with her and pretty much put my hand down, didn't do a single thing, just tried not to fall off, and she just did the whole thing by herself and was just amazing. And I think we ended up coming second place, and it was just awesome. She was very, very special girl. So she's turning 18 this year. Oh, 19. She's turning 19 this year. So she's getting older, and she's been amazing for me the last few years. She's been retired from competing, but is helping me give back a little bit, and she's helping me teach other younger kids that come for riding lessons with me. And I think she really loves it, and she's always been so perfect, and she's the horse that's always a yes kind of girl. So that's just, she's been a massive part of my life. So like I said, I live on a horse and cattle property, so we breed and train horses, and I was on a bunch of different horses from when I was really little. I would riding all different levels and abilities, and just loving it, and that really helped with my riding skills, and I was able to jump on any sort of horse and go from there. My whole family can actually ride, and we do muster with the 4 of us sometimes, and that's a heap of fun. But dad and I are the main ones who do most of the riding and the training and competing. But my mum loves riding as well, and I think my brother enjoys riding when we're all together and when we're doing something pretty fun.
Sounds amazing. You just have grown up in the dream horse life on what looks like an amazing property from the videos and pictures on your Instagram. That's so cool. And not too many people on the podcast so far have been brought up in a horsey family. So it's good to hear from someone who has had that, that natural start with horses. And can you tell us what a day in the life of Sophie looks like now?
Yeah, so I can honestly say that no 2 days are alike, seriously. And that just comes down to, I think, living on a property, something's always happened. There's always someone's getting injured, or someone needs moving, or the bison have jumped a fence, or something's always happened. So that's a big part. You need to be fairly flexible with that sort of thing. I work part-time. I'm a real estate photographer part-time. I attend uni full-time. I also give riding lessons and liberty and trick lessons in my spare time, which isn't exactly spare time, but I love it, so I make it happen. And then obviously I am a competitive horse rider. I compete, so I want to train my horses and I want to get better at that. So a lot of time goes into that as well. And then I have lots of animals. Like I said before, I love animals, all shapes, sizes, and since I was little have had everything that you can pretty much think of. I just love them. So I spend a lot of time with my animals, just playing, mucking around and looking after them.
Wow, that sounds like a really full-on life. So you've got the photography for the real estate, you're studying full-time. What did you say you were studying?
I'm studying a Bachelor of Equine Science, so it
Oh,
suits me
nice.
quite well, yeah.
Nice. And what do you plan on doing with the bachelor? Like, are you eventually going to train full time, or what are your goals in that space?
Originally, I did want to upgrade into vet science, and that was my plan. I've always, since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to work with animals, and I guess the most obvious sort of door that I had to walk through was, okay, you want to work with animals, you be a vet. And that's always been a dream of mine. But then since finishing school and actually trying to get into vet to study, it's quite competitive. And I have, I haven't been able to upgrade so far. So I guess I was doing just a Bachelor of Science, and it wasn't for me. I wasn't loving it. So I changed to equine science, and I just adore it. Like, I just have so much fun. It's really awesome. So in the future, job wise, I don't have anything set in place. I've got some ideas. I love behavior, equine behavior, animal behavior in general is probably the path that I want to go down the most. But apart from that, I'm keeping options open and really just keen to see what happens over the next few years.
Yeah, sounds good. And what else are you into outside of horses and animals? Have you got any other hobbies or interests?
Apart from, I love photography, and that's where the real estate photography came in, because I've always loved it, and that just became an option, and I love doing that. I love taking photos of my own animals, and if I could expand that business into animal photography later on, that would be awesome. I really love most things related to horses. Really, all my hobbies revolve around horses or animals in some way. So I'm a boring person like that.
I'm sure everyone listening to the podcast can relate, though. Like, I think if you're a horse person, your life just revolves around horses. But
it really does.
Yeah, that's the way we definitely like it.
Yeah.
So, how many horses do you have, and can you tell us about each of their personalities?
Yes.
Probably have so many on the farm.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is, I could sit here for 6 hours and talk about all the horses and all their different personalities, but I'll keep it simple. Like I said, we do have a horse, we run a horse business. So we're breeding, training, selling. A couple of years ago, we were breeding 7 horses a year and breaking, training, selling. And so obviously we had quite a few horses back then. Our general herd is a bit smaller now. I think approximately 20-ish horses at the moment.
Only 20.
Just roughly, yeah. I don't even know how many. Oh, it's so bad. But no, and that's all different stages and levels. And we've got a few foals at the moment, which I'm sure you've seen on Instagram. They're little cuties, Lynx and Fox. And we have our brood mares, or our retired horses, and our little cluster of competition horses that are sort of the horses that we mostly train, and they're just sort of doing fitness and competing, and they're heaps of fun to work with. And then obviously all the little babies, which are at different stages of being broken in and different levels of training, and that's a heap of fun as well. But my horses that my life revolves around mostly would be Bugsy, of course. He is just the sweetest boy. He is just my whole world, honestly. I wouldn't be the person that I am today without him. And I know it sounds cheesy, especially that he's a horse, but I really just far out. I just love that horse so much. And his personality, he is a big bossy boots. He loves to boss anyone around that he can. He loves bossing the babies around, although he'd never really do any damage. He just likes to prove that he's the big tough man of the house. And then in his herd of all of the horses his age, he probably sits around the middle of the pecking order, which is interesting because he's actually not that tough. He just likes to think he is. And then we've got Rabbit, who is just the biggest sweetheart. And even though it's not my favorite term to use, she is a bomb-proof kid's horse. Like, she just has been there, done that, done everything. I genuinely trust her with my life. She is just, we've been through a different relationship with her than with other horses that I have. She's just, She's sort of a bit more like a sister or another mum. She's just great. She is just loving to everyone, always just the biggest sweetheart. And then there's Zinc, the baby, which is he's just turned 4 at the end of last year. So he is pretty much the opposite to Bugsy in most ways, personality-wise, which is really interesting. Wow. Because they are half brothers. Yeah, so he is. No, he's not bossy. He's happy. He's not necessarily submissive either. He just goes and does his own thing and is happy to do that. Bugsy's definitely the laid back, lazy, just if we don't have to do the work, I'm happy to just sit back and chill. Zinc is just a little ball of just fiery energy, and he will just loves running, loves bucking, loves just doing fun stuff. He's just got so much energy always. And that's, yeah, from working with Bugsy for so long and so intensely and then going to Zinc, it was sort of like, whoa, where did this come from?
Yeah, wow.
It was heaps of fun.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it was really good.
Ah, that's good. There's more. There's more. No, they're probably, they're my main 3 babies. Like I could, go on and on, but I'll stick with those 3 because they're the most, they come up on my Instagram, the most people probably get to see them. Yeah. And would you say, like, it sounds like there are a lot of horses that sort of come and go being on the farm? Like, are they the 3 that are yours, if you know what I mean? Yeah, like I have a lot to do, especially now that I'm older. I break in most of the horses, and Dad said, okay, that job's yours now, now that you're old enough. So I do most of the breaking, and I find selling really hard because I get so attached to every horse, but it's not realistic to be able to keep all the horses in the world, even though I definitely would. But Bugsy, Rabbit and Zinc they're my main babies, and I have a lot to do with the other competition horses. Like I've just recently got Joey, or Johnny Be Good, that I do quite a bit with, and I love him. He's fantastic. I haven't had him for as long. So I guess we're still getting to know each other, and but I think those 3 are probably the most that I have to do with. And then of course Lynx, but she's only a baby as well, and I haven't really had a proper introduction with her yet. Yes. So Nice. And just to clarify, it's camp drafting that you compete in mostly?
Yes, camp drafting. Yep.
And the breed of horses that you breed is?
Stock horse, quarter horse cross.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
And can you tell us a little about your training approach and philosophy now? Like, do you use a negative or positive reinforcement? Do you have like a method that you follow, or do you have any principles that you use to guide your training? Can you tell us more about your approach?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a big believer in combined reinforcement. I love it. I love negative reinforcement. I love positive reinforcement, and they're both very different. And I think, especially like even including myself when I was younger, I really didn't know how to differentiate the 2. I guess I had in my head negative reinforcement, negative, bad. I don't want to do negative reinforcement. And then I thought pressure and release was something completely different. And then positive reinforcement, of course, I thought all sorts of things, such as a negative reinforcement or the pressure and release, that the release was the reward, and just little things like that I think unless you really get to sit down and talk to someone about it, you can't differentiate and work through that in your own head, and then you sort of get stuck saying the wrong thing. Like I see a lot of people say, I only use positive reinforcement with my horse, and then you see them leading a horse with a halter, and you're like, well, okay, this is actually negative reinforcement. You're using a halter, that's pressure and release. So I guess and just this year, especially doing the equine science subjects, I've had a really methodical breakdown of different punishments and different rewards and different training systems, and it's been very methodical, broken down. Okay, this is actually what this means, sort of thing. And I've loved that, and it's just absolutely blown my mind, and it probably should have blown my mind maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but I've never really sat down to think, okay, so negative reinforcement, we're adding pressure and then we're releasing, and then we're doing something else. And for me personally, I love combined reinforcement. I think it was Mustang Maddie on Instagram. She introduced a technique. I think it was the cookie on top method or something along those lines, and I loved it. And it was you're using pressure and release or negative reinforcement, and you're adding a pressure to your horse, asking, and you're waiting for something. You're waiting for the behavior that you want. When that behavior occurs, you release the pressure, and then if it's a big effort or they've really tried for you, then you add a positive reinforcement like a pat or a scratch or a piece of food. And that's probably the method that I use most often now, and I really love it. And it works best for me and my horses, I think. Being able to use that with different horses, and not all horses are the same. So Bugsy is an extremely food motivated horse. Anything, he will do anything for food. But Zinc is, you can offer him food while he's doing something and he just has zero interest in it whatsoever. And
interesting.
I find that really interesting. And so I'm like, I really had to think then and go, okay, well, if I can't get you to do it with food, how else can I positively reinforce this? And I think something really cool, I just came back from the Brumby project in I can't remember where it was, but I just came back from the Brumby project, and that's where there are a bunch of people working with Brumbies that have just been captured, and they're going through a rehabilitation sort of process to get to go to new homes and start their new lives. And I think for me watching that, I'm there with Bugsy doing Liberty, and he's getting a positive reinforcement from me saying good boy, because he knows what that means, and it's sort of a clicker training almost. Rather than the click, it's the good, and he can put that together. But then you watch people working with their Brumbies, and they might say good boy or good girl, and the Brumbies just thinking, oh my god, now this thing speaks. And that's just a pressure for them, like you would cluck your horse and add a pressure. And I found that really, really cool to think about, like, okay, so they can't like reassure their horse, oh, good boy, you're doing a good job. Even the soft voice, the horse is just thinking, far out, now it talks, it moves, what am I going to do? So they really have to work with pressure and release, and that's basically where it starts, because obviously a Brumby that you haven't touched before, you can't walk up and give it some food and say, no, you're doing a good job. They're just, so I found that really interesting, and that sort of, I guess, solidified in my head that negative reinforcement isn't a bad thing. Like, lots of people hear negative and go, no, I don't want any part of that. It's bad, negative. And it's really not. It's really as simple as just putting any sort of pressure. It could be your voice, it could be clucking, it could be using a whip, it could be just using your hands, it could be you shaking your arms in its face. Like, they're all just pressures. And the release is that what they're learning from after that. And that can be a lot, I guess, better than a lot of people think about it as. And I found that really interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. And I suppose with that Brumby challenge and being in Queensland, I'm guessing you're around a lot of kind of traditional trainers in a way that perhaps haven't experimented with positive reinforcement or clicker training. Do you know what some of their views are? Like, when you bring out the treat pouch, like, have you had anyone go, oh, well, you're going to spoil your horse if you use treats? Or have you had any remarks or comments like that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, and I mean, campdrafting, it came about, it was the stockman's way of moving cattle, and that's how we split cattle up, and we use it at home, and campdrafting was basically a game. It turned that into a game. So it's a very different community than, I suppose, a lot of like the Instagram community that I'm probably more involved with is very open-minded and are very different. So yeah, of course, I've had people mucking around at camp drafts and doing Liberty, and people are amazed and they love it, and then they see me give food to the horse and they're like, oh, aren't you just like bribing your horse to do it then?
Yeah,
I'm like, well, okay. yeah or they're just, it's not even something that they really thought of, because I know. And then opposite end of the spectrum is someone who can only do something with their horse if they're doing it, dragging them with a piece of bread or something like that. And I suppose you get the two different sides of it, and it's really interesting to think about and balance it up. And yeah, but no, there've definitely been comments sort of like, oh, okay, that's weird. Why are you feeding him food? Like, you've just done what you want, just release and be done with it. Why the extra praise? But that's just because they wouldn't have thought of it before. And then you break it down, explain it, and show them sort of what you can do with that. And they're like, wow, okay, wow, that was actually really cool. I might, and people even start applying it to their own horses and see massive differences and go, actually, you know what, that works really well. I think I'm going to keep doing that. Yeah. Exactly. And I've loved that.
I think it's good that you mentioned the two sides, because yeah, you're going to get some people who are way on one side, like fully pure positive reinforcement, and then you get your more traditional people who are like, why are you using treats? Like, yeah. Anyway, we could speak for hours on that. I would like to know from you, do you have a mantra or a philosophy that you like to live by?
I do, and I did this, I've posted it on Instagram before, and I actually came across it. Someone asked me this a few years ago, and I went, oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm the worst at remembering these sorts of things. So I did a quick Google, and I was looking up like cool horsey quotes, and I was like, yeah, okay, scrolling through like, oh, none of these like fit. And I ended up on a website, through a website onto another website, and there was this little quote, take away the tack and you're left with the truth. And I think I've posted on Instagram quite a while ago, and I really just went, oh, yeah, okay, no. And the more you sort of think about it, the more you like really process it and go, actually, you're really onto something there. And I love that. And that's probably something that if not live by, I'm always challenging myself with it. Yes. I love to do stuff. Like I ride in a bridle, I ride in a bothel, I ride in a neck rope, and then I ride without any tack at all. And I want to be able to challenge myself. Okay, if I can ride this well in a bridle, I want to ride that well with nothing. And if I can't do that, then I'm doing it wrong, and I want to change how I'm doing it. So because my communication isn't clear, or I like to think of tack as sort of training wheels in a way. Yeah. And obviously I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable going out and putting myself in harm's way or my horse in harm's way if it meant taking away all the tack and being like, oh, look, I can still do it. If there was a chance of something bad happening, I don't think it's about that. I think it's just the communication between you and your horse, and saying, like, you do take away the tack, and it's just you and the horse, and it's whatever happens between you two, and that's your result.
Yes, I love that. And I'm sure you experiment a lot with your own horses, like with tackless and that sort of thing. But what about your breakers? Like, do you incorporate any riderless riding with the breakers, or do you not so much experiment with that, or do you wait till they've ticked off certain criteria first? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's interesting, because with Bugsy, I really the first time I put a neck rope in, like Dad used to do neck roping a lot when he was younger, and wouldn't have done it for probably 20 years after between when I was born and probably the last few years. And I saw someone riding with a neck rope and went, oh, cool, I want to try that. And Dad's like, I used to do this all the time. I'm like, yeah, sure you did. And he's like, no, seriously. I used to have all my horses working with the neck rope. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's kind of cool. I want to do that. So with Bugsy, I felt confident on him. So I really just took the bridle off, put the neck rope on, went, okay, let's see how we go. And it worked. With Zinc, and I've ridden quite a few other horses. I love riding our sale horses before we take them onto new homes and sell them. I love riding them the neck ropes, and just to show how, I guess, I don't like the word controllable, but how well they are responsive and that
how
sort
well
of thing.
You've trained them.
yeah, I suppose. And I love doing that with them. So yeah, and they're usually younger horses, but it's more of a training process, I suppose, starting with the bridle and the neck rope. And yeah, I love challenging myself and seeing how quickly they can adapt and how quickly they can learn. And it's really quite shocking how fast they change over. And I had a lot of questions last weekend saying, how long did it teach you to teach Zinc or Bugsy to ride fully in a neck rope? And I'm like, a day, like 2 days, and they're like, whoa. And it really, their horses are so clever. People don't give them enough credit sometimes. They really just work it out.
They so are. And I feel like when you're riding with tack, if you're riding with your body first before you use your reins and, other tools, then it's easily transferable to riding in a neck rope because your horse is already in tune with your body cues. So
definitely.
That's why I think with people listening, they're like, what do you mean you taught it in 2 days? But really, probably, I'm guessing all of your rides before that, you were really helping your horse understand your body cues, right?
Definitely. And I mean, sorry, I didn't make that clear, but we ride massively, like with our legs. Like most of our cues are coming from our legs. So I've never really been like understood the seat thing, and because I think that's more of an English concept, I suppose, or to me it has been. And so I guess I've never really worked that out in my head, but I know that I ride with my legs and I'm massive with riding with legs, and that does mean lots of pressure, but I want my horses to be able to do just as much stuff from my legs. So when I'm riding with the neck rope, it's more just my legs, and then the neck rope's the backup.
Yes.
And with our babies, like they start with, you pull their nose around and you ask them with the bridle, with the halter or whatever it is, but it's the legs that are my legs or the rider's legs that are really asking the softness and asking the release from pressure. And so that's the big lead up, I suppose. And you put the neck rope on and they're like, okay, it feels different. There's not something in my mouth anymore. There's nothing on my face, but the legs are still there. And I go back to that.
Yes. I'm sensing there are quite a few differences between like being brought up in an English type of riding versus what would you say you are like?
I mean, campdrafting technically isn't classified as a Western, but it's just an Australian sport. So I don't really know what I am. I'm just outback Westernish sort of riding.
We'll call it that. Australian outback Western riding, campdrafting. Tell us more about
something along those lines.
Yeah. Tell us more about your campdrafting competition goals.
Cool. So I love competing, and I know that a competition, and especially in the equine world, is a massive thing. A lot of bad things happen in the competition world of any sport really. But equine is very public at the moment and is a big topic at the moment, equine competition. So I think even just me competing is hard sometimes because, like in every discipline, you see things that you go, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I don't want to ever see that again, or I don't want to ever be like that. And I think a lot of people are really brave and say, do you know what, this competition stuff, it's not for me. I don't like what's happening here, so I'm going to go do my own thing or step out of competition. Respect that. But for me, I know that my horses love it just as much as I do. Campdrafting horses and cattle bred horses, they are bred to be what we call as cowy. So that's where they have that natural cow sense, and they, as babies, like see cattle and are just drawn to it and are just excited by it. And then it goes from there. Like they just love it. And our horses are really taught to think for themselves in campdrafting training, and you want to be able to, I guess, put your horse in a position and say, okay, I've helped you here, but now I need you to take over a little bit and I need you to help me. And that's where the horse goes, okay, yep, I know this is where I'm going to be. I've got to work this out by myself. And then you as the rider can help and move them. And then they go, brain switches on, yes, okay, I've got to be there. I've got to stay here. So I don't know if you've seen a camp draft, but it's basically you have a small arena and a large arena and a mob of cows in the smaller one. You and your horse go in, pick one out, take it up to the front of the small yard, and then you work it out and it's a cutting sort of almost movement. And then you call gate, go out and basically track this cow at a flat gallop around the course outside and through a gate. And that's the end of the course. So a lot of that, especially in the camp, the goal is to be able to really just pretty much after you've taken your cow at the front is to put your hand down and say, okay, it's all on you now. And the horses they just love it. And they're like, okay, I know what I've got to do. So they're just working so hard by themselves. And I think, yeah, and outside they know where they have to be on the cow. And so many horses you watch, they just strive to be there. And I posted a picture the other day of Bugsy and I as we went through the gate at the end of our course, and Bugsy's face is just solid determination because he is just in there and loving it, and it's the cutest thing and proper proud mum moment.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so they really, I think for me, I know there's a lot of bad things that happen, and it happens in all disciplines, and I don't want to turn a blind eye to that. I will always stand up for it and call someone out if they're doing the wrong thing. But between me and my horses, I know they love it and I really enjoy it myself. And that's not something that I am wanting to give up just yet anyway. And so, yeah, I love competing. I think it's really great. I also just wanted to mention that I love camp drafting for so many different reasons. I absolutely love the horse side of things, and it's fabulous. It's so exciting to watch. The horses are just amazing. But I do love, and such a big part of camp drafting is the camp draft committees and communities, and how people can drive up to 13, 15, 18 hours away just for a weekend camp draft. And you just get to meet people from all around Queensland or Queensland, New South Wales, even Australia. And you sit down, you have a drink, you have some nibblies and dinner with people that you haven't seen for ages, and you get to have a really good community time. And that's what made it really hard over COVID, was that there were no competitions. So I really missed that atmosphere, and I really missed the social connections, and a lot of our friends we don't see unless it's at a camp draft. So we really missed that, and it's great to be back this year camp drafting again, getting to see everyone and just really getting that social aspect in, and that's been awesome.
Amazing. And I guess that's what sport is all about, right? It's the community. Like, yes, we want to win and we want to do really well and we want to put on a good performance. But if we don't have that community, if we don't have that support and we don't have other people around us who are, on the same mission, then what's really the point?
Exactly. Definitely.
Why do you reckon the horses love it so much? Like, do you think they see the goal or they understand the game and then they get like, I don't know, is it intrinsically rewarding for them, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just in their nature to go to that cow, and they love cattle, and or just things that move. I suppose it's sort of like a
case in a way.
Yeah, like a cat. Like they see something move, they're a predator, and they have to just go catch it. And cow-bred horses they just love that excitement in the game. And we still have her. She's retired now, but she's probably one of the best horses that Dad's ever had, and her name's Hickory Chick. And we have a mechanical cow set up in the arena where we can practice and train on our babies before the cattle stage. And and that's also, we have that, and then the arena on one side and our horse paddock on the other side. And whenever Dad would be training in the arena with a mechanical cow, Hickory would gallop up from the end of the paddock and come, and she would work on the other side of the fence, just on the cow, on her own. She just absolutely just had a ball, and she just would see it move and just straight up and lock on by herself and do it all by herself, just because I think they just find it fun. They just really enjoy it. And obviously there are some horses that I think have been trained differently and don't have that love for it. To them, it's more just a job and they just have to do it, I think, like in all disciplines. But the goal is to have a horse that they want to be there and they want to do it by themselves. You're just really sitting there helping out.
That's so cool. And how is it actually judged? Like, do they score you on the horse's agility, or how much you have to touch the reins, or like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's judged mostly on sort of so the control of the cow, I think, is a big thing. So if your horse looks like it's covering your cow and all the pegs really well, that's great. The closer you can stay to your cow and the more even your circles are, the better you're judged. Really just the control of the cow. And then also if you come out and your horse is wanting to go away from the cow and you're wanting to go to the cow and it just looks like not pretty picture, then that's going to be judged more harshly. And then in the camp, you have 2 chances to bring your cow up to the front and go out. If you drop it, that's your sort of your last one chance. Sorry, that you drop it, that's your last chance. If you drop it again, you're disqualified. So it's just really exciting. It's just such a thrilling sport because it's so fast paced and it's really the run's over in 40 or 50 seconds. So it's just in there and go, and there's really no stopping and thinking. Once it's started, you've got to sort of go through with it. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. It sounds exciting. I reckon one of my horses, Beauty, she would be a bit cowy, if that's what you call it. She loves to chase things. And like she'll see the kangaroo, she chases the kangaroos out the paddock.
Oh my gosh.
But she's a warm blood, so I don't know if she's going to fit in that crowd, but I think
that'd be so cute though. Yeah, I mean, that's all that matters, hey?
Yeah, that's it. And speaking of, different disciplines and the good and the bad of what happens in the competition ring, what do you think makes a happy horse?
I think I wrote some stuff down for this because I knew that like it's a tough question. Like there's so many things that I think makes a happy horse, and a lot of it just basically comes down to good nutrition, fresh water, having a place to run around with, having friends to socialize. They're social animals. They need to do that despite I saw a massive debate on Instagram the other day of someone arguing that they didn't need to have their horse in a turnout and they didn't need to socialize their horse. And that just absolutely blew my mind because we have only ever had horses together. The only time we haven't is when we've had client horses that were stallions, and they obviously had to be separated. And we had the choice recently to keep one of our young horses as a stallion or not. And we decided against it just because we wanted him to have that enriched social life. And obviously there's alternatives and some stallions that are beautiful natures. I'm seen so many and they can run with other geldings, and that's fantastic. I think that's great. But to separate a horse away from others is just, I think it's so horrible, and I don't love it unless it's an absolute necessity for the health of the horse. Then I can understand that. But yeah, it's really just a happy horse. I think it's just the basic needs, and as long as they're met, it can only go up from there, sort of thing. But I think there is a baseline where unless all of these needs are met, then your horse is going to be depressed in some way or another, and it's not getting enough.
Yeah, it's kind of like, in a way, with humans, like if we're not healthy, if we're not getting enough sleep, if we're not, getting love and social interaction with our friends, like humans have basic needs as well in order for us to be happy. And then all the other stuff is like enrichment to our lives. Like with horses, like, I'm sure you would consider your trick training enrichment. Can you tell us if you have any favorite tricks and what sort of started you off with trick training?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. Like it's just from there, it sort of just gets better and more enriching and better lives. And I think that's important. With me, I watched, I think it was on Instagram, just my personal account. And I saw this girl do this really cool, I think it was a Mustang makeover. And she just did this awesome liberty and free riding. And I was just like, whoa, that was so cool. I want to be able to do that. And in my little kid head, I'm going, yeah, that'll never happen. And then I just saw more of it and I started looking it up and I went, okay, you know what? I think I could make this work maybe. So I just started, and I've never really done an official lesson or anything like that. It's just been trial and error training for the last 7 or 8 years, I suppose, and just trying everything with Bugsy. Bugsy was just the most patient boy with me and really just said, okay, what are we doing today, sort of thing. And yeah, I just worked through stuff one at a time. And I guess as a kid, I wasn't very patient, and I got so frustrated because I could see that someone had just got their horse to lie down. And then I'm like to Bugsy, why can't I just get you to do this? Like, just do it. Come on. Like, why is it so difficult?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the ways that he's just made me such a better person now, because my patience has just increased dramatically. And it has to do with animals. You can't expect massive leaps and bounds. You need to build little steps from your ladder and go from there. And I love that about it. And yeah, no, I just think I started watching more YouTube videos. I had a really fun sort of lesson with Brianna Cook, who's a good friend of mine. She's up in the Northern Territory at the moment doing amazing things with her horses. She's just incredible. And Brianna Jane Horsemanship on Instagram, highly recommend. She's just incredible. And she gave me my first official sort of lesson when she was at home one time, and I loved it. I just went, okay, now I'm hooked now, and I just researched a bunch more things and just kept working at it, just kept trying, kept failing, tried again, failed again, tried again, and eventually got something that looked half like Liberty and half like a trick that I wanted to do, and it got better from there, I suppose.
How cool, and what a good way to learn as well. Like, I just think sometimes through trial and error learning, you really learn those lessons that you can't replicate when someone just tells you exactly what to do.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I think I spent hours researching and watching videos, and, I'd look up how to get your horse to do Liberty circles, and 20 videos would pop up, and I'd watch all of them, and I'd get through the first 30 seconds of one video, go, oh, that looks terrible. I don't want to do that. Oh my gosh. Swipe. Okay, next one. All right. Oh, I loved how she did that, but I'm not a big fan of this part. Next video. Oh, okay. I really like how I did this, but I hated how I did that part. Next one. And sort of just pieced it together myself and ended up with some sort of a I guess, training style. And since then, obviously, I've changed it so much to the point where I'm confident teaching it as well. And I definitely would say that I have so much learning to do, and I definitely wouldn't call myself a professional in any way at all, but I'm just loving it, and I'm getting better at it, and I know that I have improved, and my horses are learning faster and easier, and I think that's the best sort of positive reinforcement to me, is that it's working and it keeps me going, it keeps me motivated to do it.
Yes. I love how you sort of pick and choose what you like from different people. But speaking of things that you didn't like in those videos, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making with horses?
I think the biggest thing would probably be just blaming the horse for their own mistake. And it's really just as simple as that, and can be put out to any sort of thing that you're doing, whether it's Liberty, riding, trick riding, whatever it is. It's the fact that something's gone wrong, and the horse and the rider are both confused and going, this isn't working out so well. And then the rider flipping out at the horse going, understand, why don't you get it? Like, it's your fault. Or if the horse has recently been sent to a trainer, I think a lot of mistakes or frustrations happen after someone sent their horse away, and the trainer, who knows what they're doing, is confident in their methods. They train this horse, the horse understands, it's easy, and then the person gets their horse back and their riding style is completely different and may not be giving the clearest signals and the clearest cues, and then the horse goes, oh my gosh, this is so confusing, I'm just going to freeze, or I'm going to freak out, or I'm going to go back to bucking because that's what I know how to do. And the rider will immediately blame the horse because they're stupid and because they don't get it, or they'll go straight back to the trainer. You haven't trained my horse, you haven't done a damn thing, this is terrible. And when really it's just they need to open their mind up to the fact that, okay, maybe it's me, maybe I need to change, maybe I could improve myself. If the horse is getting trained, then maybe I should be there, I should be watching how the horse is being ridden, how it works better, how I can be better. I think riding, Liberty, everything, it's a 50-50 partnership. You need to be putting in as much effort as your horse. And if you want your horse to change, then you need to change, if that makes sense. Like, I think that's yeah, I think that that's the biggest mistake that I sort of see, and people just getting so frustrated with anyone but themselves. And if they could just open their mind to the fact that, oh, hang on a second, I was doing that so wrong. Let me change it. And they change, and then they go, oh, wow, like this is amazing. You're doing everything perfectly. Oh, okay. And yeah, that would definitely be the biggest thing for me.
And that should be freeing for people as well, because, you know, themselves is something that they can control, as in like they can take action and, you know, learn how to be a better rider or learn how to have lighter cues or whatever it may be. Whereas if you're constantly blaming, you know, the trainer or the horse, that's sort of out of your control. Like you can't change other people.
Yeah,
you can change yourself. So I really like that you made that
definitely
point. Can you tell us what is something you once did with horses that you now no longer do, and why is that?
Probably just back to the patience thing. I used to just be just the most impatient kid. I just wanted things to happen, and if I could see someone doing it, I thought, okay, well, it's possible, so I just want it to happen. And I couldn't wrap my head around, I suppose, okay, no, this takes time. You need to work on it. You need to take baby steps. And as a kid, like you see something amazing or you do something amazing, you go, oh my God, do it better, 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 better. Okay, this is great. Oh my gosh. And you can't break it down. It's really difficult unless someone pulls you aside and say, actually, look how far you've come. Like, this is incredible. You are doing amazing right now. Like, this is great. Now let's take that slight next step. And like, I think back to myself, I've just been having a very sort of questionable week leading up to my performance at the Brumby project, and reflecting on myself and thinking, wow, like I really haven't done anything amazing since I performed there last year. And this was a very unproductive year in my Liberty and Trick. And I was a bit down about it because I was thinking, wow, I've done so much. And then the last 12 months, like, where did that go? I've done nothing. I really haven't done anything. And I think it wasn't that I hadn't done anything. It was little things. It was perfecting things. It was getting stuff better. It wasn't any dramatic new tricks. Like, I think in 1 year I taught Bugsy how to bow, lay down, and rear. And then the last few years, and especially last year, I just felt like I did nothing. And I was really like, oh, well, that sucks. I'm a failure now. I haven't done anything. But yeah, I think once I was talking about it with mum and dad, and they were like, well, actually, you know, like, this is looking great. And if you look at a video of you doing exactly this with you and Bugsy a year ago, it's just little things. And I think it's easy to get stuck, even riding. I think it's easy to get stuck. Wow, nothing's changed. I'm stuck. It's a bit of a creative block, I suppose. But when you break it down, something's changed. Something has always changed, and it's always getting better.
Yeah. Even if it's not huge, massive steps, those little tweaks, those, you know, that 1% improvement makes all the difference added up over time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what is something that you believe is true that a lot of horse people disagree with?
Maybe negative reinforcement. I think it does have a really bad name, and I've spoken to people about it just in conversation, and they're like, oh, you wouldn't use negative reinforcement. Your horses love you. And I'm like, what do you think it is? Like, come on, it's okay. Negative reinforcement, pressure and release. And yeah, I think and my eyes wouldn't have been open to that. I thought negative reinforcement was the worst thing in the world up until last year, and someone told me about it and broke it down. I was like, oh, I do that every day. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I think, yeah, it's pretty simple one, but I think that is a bit mind-blowing for some people.
Yeah. And it's funny how we sort of learn it the wrong way around. Like, we learn how to ride, you know, we get good with horses, and then all of a sudden we learn the learning theory, and we're like, oh, that all makes sense now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, so many things.
Yeah,
it really should. And like, we've done a lot at uni about desensitizing and habituation, and people get those two so confused as well. And a lot of people are like, okay, I've just desensitized my horse to something, when really desensitizing probably isn't the process that you use. That's more like flooding your horse or just really just throwing it all in there, and you're habituating your horse in steps, and then you've worked up to a desensitized horse. But you don't just go straight to desensitizing. It's the habituation process, and then all of a sudden you have a desensitized horse. And I think like just so many examples like that. And I love that. And I've been sitting in class with my jaw on the ground going, oh my gosh, I've been saying things so wrong. This is silly. I should know this.
How interesting. It sounds like you're really passionate about the equine behavior side of things. And
I love it.
Along the same lines of the positive, negative reinforcement and, mistakes that people make, can you tell us your thoughts on the bits versus bitless debate?
Yeah, I ride with a bit. I ride without a bit. I ride neck rope, tackless. I think that any piece of equine equipment can be used in a cruel way, and I think it can be used in a kind way. I also sometimes ride with spurs, which I know is a very controversial thing, and I don't always ride with spurs, and I don't want to ride with spurs if I can't do what I'm asking from my horse without them. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people will never ride with spurs and will never ride with a bit, and I highly respect them. And I think, if that's what they want to do, that's fantastic. And I really do respect that. Mm-hmm. But for me, I like to ride with a bit because I think that I can get a more precise sort of communication, and same with the spurs. And it doesn't have to be cruel. I think that's another thing. People hear spurs and they hear bit and they go, oh, yuck, like why would you do that to your horse? Yeah. And I've been experimenting with a leather bit at the moment, which is obviously quite a bit softer, and that's been really interesting to see how the horses respond, and it's really the same as a normal bit or as a hackamore. And I think as long as you have that communication with your horse and they're understanding it, if your horse has never ridden in a bit before and you just put one in their mouth and say, okay, deal with it, that's going to be really harsh on them and it's going to be really rough. Whereas if you sort of break it down and make it easier, and I think it can be a positive thing for them, and it can be a positive thing for the rider, because a lot of the time you're using less pressure, or I don't know, it really just depends on the horse themselves or the rider. I have horses that I wouldn't ride with spurs just because they don't like it, or because they just don't enjoy it. So why would I put that on them then? I'm not a cruel person. I don't want to do something that they don't want to do. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think that it affects a lot of the horses. They don't see it as, oh, okay, she's not wearing them. Oh, she's wearing them now. That's terrible. It's just all the same to them. Yeah.
Very wise. And speaking of leather bits, what you were talking about before, I actually always wondered what that would be like, because you know how some horses just love chewing leather? They like up leather things. I'm like, I wonder if my horse would like a leather bit. But anyway, I'd love to know what horse-related purchase has most positively impacted your life in the last 12 months.
I'm not a very good buyer. I hate shopping. I'm not even a big fan of horse-related shopping. So I don't buy a lot. Most of our equipment is at least 50 years old. Which is pretty funny. But I think a little while ago I got quite a few new neck ropes from Free Riding Neck Ropes, and I adore them. I absolutely love them. Use them nearly every day. Also, the leather bit was a really cool purchase, and that was, I guess, out of my comfort zone because I'd never really heard of it. I had no idea how to use it. Didn't even know how the horses would react to it, but it turned out to be an awesome purchase, and I really love it.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. And if you could have dinner with any 3 horse people, dead or alive, who would it be and why? And what would you like to ask them?
I really struggled with this question. I have so many people on that list, so I'm going to expand it to a little more than 3.
Okay.
Ben Atkinson would have to be up there. I really think that he's such a cool trainer. I would love to get to meet him one day, and I think he's really incredible. Alyssa Pelly, She's amazing as well, and her two Lusitanos are incredible. I love watching them. One of the first horsey sort of liberty trick people that I ever followed on Instagram was Tanya and Bettina from Native Horses on Instagram, and they, I guess, were one of the first people that sort of opened my mind up to liberty and trick riding, and that was really cool. They made a lot of things sort of available in my head that I'd never thought of before, and that was really cool. And Matilda Brent too. I absolutely love her and the relationship that she's had with her horses. And if I could add one more person in, it would probably be Matt Harneke, because he just seems like a cool guy and just a bunch of fun. And he's from Australia too, so that would be heaps of fun. The questions, gosh, I would ask them so many questions until they would never speak to me again.
Yeah.
I honestly probably less questions and more just watching, I suppose. Yeah. If I could really just go and stay with each of them for a month and just watch everything they do and drill it into my brain, that would just be amazing, because I really respect all of them, and I think they can do amazing things with their horses. And just to be able to watch that and learn how they've built that relationship with their horses, because they all teach differently, and but their horses adore them all the same. And, you know, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, cool. Well, we'll have to tag each of those people in this podcast, and hopefully they'll listen and be like, yes, Sophie, come and live with me for a month.
Come and invite me, yes.
That would be fantastic. So if you could turn back the time and talk to yourself 10 years ago, you've sort of already spoken about the getting frustrated and maybe a little greedy in your training. What would you tell yourself?
Probably just to have fun with it. It's especially just with the liberty and trick training. There's no rule book. There's no competition that you're preparing for. There's no strict, you can do this, you can't do this. Like, it's just fun. There's no timeline. And I got caught up a few years, like just with little things like, oh my gosh, why can't I get it? And back to that frustration thing. But just have fun. It's supposed to be fun. The horses are enjoying it. You're enjoying it. There's no rush at all. And yeah, just to have fun.
Yes.
No pressure. That.
Yeah, that's the way it should be all the way through with horses, right?
Definitely. Absolutely. Exactly. I know. Yeah.
How are you continuing to learn about horses? What are you currently studying, and who teaches you, how often, etc.?
So I'm studying the Bachelor of Equine Science, which has blown my mind, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. My dad is a massive influence in my life. He, like I said, he's grown up riding horses. He spent approximately 20, 30 years training horses, outside horses. And so he has ridden probably more horses than I will ever ride. Like, it's ridiculous. And so he's an incredible trainer. He finds that pressure and release so easily and quickly, and he's releasing before I've even seen the horse do it, sort of thing. So he's just really is a proper horseman and has a connection with every horse that he rides, and they just get him and he just gets them. And I think that's really cool. And but then again, the downside of that is that I've grown up every day of my life riding with my own personal trainer. So there's been many times where I've challenged different ways, and he's explained to me, okay, you know what, I've actually tried this and this happens. And then there's times where I've done things like the positive reinforcement. He's a big positive reinforcement with scratches and good, but not so much with the food. And I guess that was sort of, he was one of the people who went, why? Like, do you really need to do that? And just because he just didn't know. And the more I did it, the more he saw, and he went, you know what, okay, this is really cool. Mm-hmm. And so him and Mum are my biggest supporters, and I love them to bits. And having Dad there, I've never really had to ride alone in a way. I know some people prefer to ride alone, but I love riding with Dad. It's heaps of fun. I'm always learning something with him, and he's got so much experience, and it's just, it's really cool. We challenge each other a lot, and I think that's really good.
That sounds amazing. You've basically had your own personal horsemanship mentor your whole life.
For good and for bad, yes. Yeah.
And so if your horses could talk with words, what do you think they would say to you, and what would you like to say to them?
Oh gosh, I would just tell them how much I love them, and it's so cheesy, but seriously, I would just how much they mean to me, and what a big part of my life they are. And if they could talk, I would hope they would say the same, and they'd probably tell me that I'm not giving them enough carrots and that I'm probably not spending enough time with them, which is fair enough. Recently, I've been so busy with uni and work, and I really just haven't done as much as I'd love to. I'd spend every minute with them if I could. And I think that's what they'd say. That's what I'd like them to say anyway. They're just such a big part of my life.
Amazing. That's so cool. I did have a couple of Instagram questions, so I put it out to you. So I picked out a couple. One of them is quite big. So
okay.
Yeah, I'll just throw it at you, and you'll probably have to give us the condensed answer. So how do you train your horses from start to end in camp drafting? Yeah.
Right. Okay. No, that's fair enough. So a little breakdown of it would probably be like, they get started, I suppose, like any horse. Like it's teaching the basic leg aids, it's teaching the basic rein aids, and that's a lot of training a baby horse. We usually break our horses in at about 2.5, and the breaking process is maybe 5-minute rides a week, and then they go out for 6 months. And it's really it's not even a breaking in process. It's more just an introduction to them to say, hey, I want to introduce this concept to you because I want you to be more open to accepting it later on in life. And obviously the age depends on the size of the horse and how they're going mentally and those sorts of things. And then I suppose when they're about 3.5, they come back in, they start more fun riding. We want our horses to enjoy the riding process. That's a really big thing. And then slow introduction to the mechanical cow. We have 2 bison that are amazing. They will stay at whatever speed you want to stay. So we can plot around on them, behind them on little breakers at a trot, and they'll just poke along at a trot, or jump on them on an older horse at a flat gallop, and they'll just keep in time. They're awesome. So our bison are a big part of that start camp drafting process. And then slow introduction to cattle until, I guess they have their first start at a camp draft, and it sometimes goes terribly wrong, and you go home and you go, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, and this, because the horse had no idea what we're doing. It was too much, and that's fine. We take a lot of our breakers and babies out with us to competitions, even if we're not competing, just so they can see and they can go, holy dooly, I didn't even know this was possible, sort of thing. And get accustomed to that before you sort of put them in a yard and say, okay, now work. And they're like, whoa, I still haven't worked out what's going on yet. So it's a fairly long process, like quite a few years. And most of our horses have their first start at a 4.5-ish. And even then, like, horses are still growing until they're 6. It's not heavy riding. It's not big rides. It's little short light rides, and that sort of exercise on a baby horse can be really beneficial. There's obviously a line where it becomes too much and you can hurt the horse, but that light riding is super beneficial, and it strengthens those muscles and gets those joints ready for a ridden career later on in life.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And another one is, what advice would you give someone wanting to teach their horse how to rear?
Make sure that they already know when appropriate times to do things are. So I definitely wouldn't be teaching a horse if they're a baby. That's just me personally, because babies don't understand when times are appropriate to do something or not. I accidentally taught Zinc how to rear when he was 3, and it started, I don't even know how it started, but he reared and I was like, whoa, that was so cool. Okay. And then I added a cue for it. It was amazing. And then we got home. We were away at the time. We got home and he just did it all the time. And he went, hey, look at me. This is cool. You liked it last time. I'll do it again. even in inappropriate times. And I sort of had to then break it, and I said, okay, no rearing allowed whatsoever. And that was when he was quite young, and it was a very short period of like a week. I know it was heartbreaking for me because he picked it up so easily, but at least I had that reassurance of, okay, later down the track when he knows, okay, now is an appropriate time and I can't just do it all the time. I think it's sort of like, I guess if you put it like a baby, they shake their head a lot. So when you first put the halter or the bridle on them, and it's sort of like an older horse wouldn't shake their head a lot because they know it's just not appropriate and they just don't need to do it. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice for teaching a rear, is knowing that, being confident that your horse isn't just going to do it inappropriately, because it is a big, powerful movement, and if you're standing in the wrong spot, it can end not in the best way. So I think that would be my only advice for that.
Yeah. Good answer. And before we wrap up, can you tell us what is next for you, and where do you see yourself in 10 years' time, and what is your ultimate goal with horses?
That is a very big question, Amalia. So I'll do a little short-term thing, I suppose. First, I'm preparing for another event, a Liberty and Trick demo in October at the Cowgirls Gathering, which I'm really excited for. My goal is to have Zinc going a lot better by then and more confident in Liberty and Tricks, which will be really cool. So I can have a little bit of a duo team, which would be heaps of fun. That would be short term. Long term, I would love to have Bugsy, Zinc, and Lynx going together in a bit of a Liberty trio. That would be just awesome. I would love that. Horse riding wise, I suppose I love competing. I definitely don't want to stop that. I want to keep my horses loving it. Definitely want to keep up with my Liberty and Tricks. I guess it's a little bit hard for me to think about starting Zinc and then Lynx from the dot again. Like Bugsy's fairly well trained, I suppose, in a way now, and I've taught him most things that I want to be able to teach him. So then to bring Zinc in and go, okay, you know absolutely none of this, you know how to bow and how to lay down, and we have to pretty much start all over again. And I'm excited. It's a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time, I'm so excited to get to do that again and see with him, okay, like I did all these different ways with Bugsy. This one works the best. Now let's see which works for you. So I'm very excited just to improve my general training ways and abilities, and I love teaching. I want to keep teaching, and I think people can learn a lot. I learn a lot by just teaching what I'm saying, because I say it to them and I go, oh yeah, that is how I do it. So just saying it out loud is sort of like, it reassures you in how you do it, and then you see it work for someone else and you're like, no, that is a really good way. I love that.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing on the horizon for me. 10 years time would just be me, horses, living my best life.
I love that. Yeah. Sounds like you've got a really bright horsey future ahead of you.
That's the plan.
So tell us where our guests can find out more about you.
Instagram, Sophie Bugsy. I do have a Facebook page. I think it's Sophie Bugs. I don't generally post as much on there as I should, but I'll try and keep up with that. And then like I said, I give lessons. If people want to meet me in person, if they want to meet the horses, if they want to try and learn something from a very unprofessional sort of winging at me, they're more than welcome to send me a message, and I'm happy to work something out and just have a bit of fun. That's all it's about.
Excellent. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. I've had so much fun chatting with you, and I've loved each and every one of your answers to these questions. And you've just got a really nice, fun and positive energy. It's been great speaking with you tonight, and I'm sure everyone has got a lot out of today's interview. So thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It has been a blast. I've loved talking to you. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified every time a new episode is released. And if you've learned even just one small thing from today's show, I would really appreciate if you could leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions from today's show, suggestions for future episodes, or just want to reach out and say hi, I would love to connect with you on Instagram at Amalia_horses. Remember to also register for my free connection and communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com.